Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we are diving into one of the most important AWS services, Identity and Access Management, or IAM for short. I've divided the topics into short and easy to follow sections to keep everything simple, clear, and straight to the point. We'll also be doing hands-on labs so you can practice what you learn in real time. The main reason I'm creating this series is to share my knowledge, showcase my skills, and hopefully attract potential hiring managers by demonstrating what I can do. I'm really excited to help you learn while also building my own opportunities in the cloud space. So make sure you stick around, hit that like button, subscribe, and without further ado, let's get into it. So basically for this lecture video, I'll be using the IAM slides as you can see on the screen and the AWS Management Console. So the IAM slide, it's Ika on Tech. Ika is my nickname, so you can call me that. And yeah, I'd like to describe IAM in my own terms. So give a brief description of what IAM is. So IAM is AWS Identity and Access Management. It's a security service that helps you control who can access your AWS resources and what actions they can perform. With IAM, you can create users, groups, and roles, assign permissions using policies, and enforce strong security practices like multi-factor authentication, MFA. It ensures that only the right people or applications have the right level of access in your AWS environment. So that's what IAM is in my own words. So let's get into the slides. So basically I'm gonna explain theory first and we're gonna do the demo last. Okay, so let's get into it. So basically, as you can see, I just spoke about users and groups. So IAM is Identity and Access Management. That's what it stands for, IAM. Then we have something called the root account, which is created by default, shouldn't be used or shared. So basically when it's the first time creating an AWS account, that is the root account, and under that root account you can create users and groups, and groups only contain users, not other groups. So basically you can't have nested groups. Users don't have to belong to a group and users can belong to multiple groups. So the description is on the diagram on the right. So basically we have three groups, which is the developers group, we have the audit team group, and we have the operations group. So on the developers group we have Alice, Bob, and Charles. On the audit team we have Charles and David. On the operation group we have David and Edward. As you can see, Charles is involved in two groups and David also is involved in two groups. And on the far right there we have an individual user, which is Fred. So Fred basically is they attach policies directly to Charles. So the main purpose of creating a group is to assign a particular permissions to a group and add users to that group, which services or what does that users get to access on the AWS Management Console or on the account, which services they can access, and so on and so forth. So that's what basically that slide is talking about. So the second slide we have the IAM permissions. So basically IAM permissions is just rules or policies. Users groups can be assigned JSON documents called policies. So they come with the JSON syntax. We're gonna see that on the demo lab. These policies define the permissions of the users. As I've said, in AWS you apply the least privilege principle. Don't give more permission than a user needs. That's AWS it's best practice actually. Then we have an example of how an IAM permission looks like. We're gonna discuss the details. All of this we're gonna explain them shortly. So moving forward, we have IAM policy inheritance. IAM policy inheritance is remember that example we discussed earlier, which is we have 3 groups and we have an individual person. So for the individual person, which is red, we have inline policies. So when you attach policies directly to a user, we call that inline policies, and these are just group policies, So for example, Charles is involved into 2 groups. So basically the policies that are assigned to this group and the policies that are assigned to the audit team group both apply to Charles. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So yeah, so IAM policy structure. So this is how the IAM policy or the permission is structured. So it consists of version, policy language version, always include 2012, 1017. It's been like that for the longest time right now. So yeah, that's the version. So the ID, it's an identifier for the policy, which is optional. Then we have the statement, one or more individual statement, which is actually required. Statement consists of the SID, the statement identifier. That identifier is for the statement, then it's optional. Then we have the effect. Effect is either an allow or deny, and we have something called the principal. Principal, it's the account. It's either an account, user, role to which this policy is applied to. We're gonna discuss about policies in the future. Roles, to say, sorry. Then we have actions. So list of actions this policy allows or denies. What action are you giving this user to do on a particular AWS account? Which services this user is allowed to access? Then we have the resource, which list of resources to which the actions apply to. So resources is just services in AWS. They refer them as resources, so don't get confused. Then we have the conditions for when this policy is in effect. It's also optional. So we have an example on our diagram here. That's all we've been discussing. For example, the things I want to point out is the SID, the statement ID, which is 1. Effect, remember effect, it's either allow or deny. Then the principal, we have AWS ARN. ARN stands for the AWS resource name. So as you can see, we have AWS IAM. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is just an example of a account ID. This is the account ID example. So action. So S3 get object. So this particular root user is allowed to S3 get object, meaning that he or she can view the bucket in S3. So S3 is a simple storage service. It's basically a service that stores files, your files or your website. We'll learn about S3 in the future. You don't have to worry about that. Then we have the resource. Remember, the resource is the list of resources to which the action is actually applied to. Then as you can see, we have the ARN, AWS. So basically here what is happening is it's a particular bucket in S3. This particular bucket, this user is only allowed to view, remember, get or put, view or edit, to put files inside that bucket. So that's basically what that means. Yeah, so the following topic is about IAM password policy. So basically, IAM password policy, you have to have a strong password. It's higher security for your account. In AWS, you can set up a password policy, set a minimum password length, require specific character types, include uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, non-alphanumeric. So the point is you have to have a strong password policy. Create a strong password whereby it's not easy to like cram. That's what that basically means. So allow all IAM users to change their own password. We'll see what that means in a moment when we demonstrate. On the lab part, they require users to change their password after some time. That's also important. There's what we call password expiration. So you have to renew your password every now and then, depending on what rules is your company or your organization has put out there. So that's basically what that means. Then MFA, it's multi-factor authentication. MFA, password plus security device you own. You're gonna see that in the moment when I try to access my AWS root account. You'll see that the main benefit of MFA is if a password is stolen or hacked, the account is not compromised, because if that person was able to figure out what your password is, he needs the second authentication process basically. So he needs either your code on your authentication app or your fingerprint or we'll see many devices to use as MFA in just a second. So there's Alice there. Alice is a password plus MFA, either is fingerprint, biometric scanner, which is your face ID, or your OAuth authenticator app where you get codes. Then if this user has these two things, that will equals to a successful login. And MFA device option in AWS. So basically me, in my case, I use a Google Authenticator, which is phone only. That's what I use currently. Then we have other objects or other options, which is the universal second factor. U2 have security key, YubiKey by Yubico, third-party support for multiple root and IAM users using a single security key. And we have other options here, which is the hardware key for MFA device and the hardware key for MFA device for AWS GovCloud. Then this is how you set your what you call your MFA on your account. So basically, before we go into the steps, I'd like to demonstrate actually. Start a lab quickly. So basically, I'm gonna go to here, but I'm gonna actually start at the beginning. So basically, I want to access the AWS management console. So I'm gonna search for AWS management console here, then click on enter. Then here it is, this URL. Then if you don't have an account yet, you're gonna click on create account. But me, I have an existing account. So basically after clicking this button, it's gonna lead you to a page whereby you enter your email and your username, and that's how you create your root or master account. So in my case, I already have an account, so I'm gonna sign into the console. So I just sign into my console. If you haven't seen the console before, this is how it looks like. You can see things like the cost and usage. Remember that I just signed in using the root account user. So this is the master account. So you can see things like the cost and usage, how AWS bills you depending on the services you are using, and you can see things like the region you are currently deploying your services on, which is for me is the default. I'll be using for this demo purposes, I'll be using US this one. So yeah, so you can see the recently visited services. But if this is your first, or you just created your root account, obviously you haven't visited any services yet, so here probably it's empty. But if you want to access a particular service, you're gonna go to the search bar, then search for that service. You're gonna click on it, then you'll be greeted by an IAM dashboard, so security recommendation. So currently on my root user account, I have MFA, so there's a tick. It's just security recommendation. It's just AWS recommending the best practices, basically. So root user has no active key access. Active access keys. You learn in the future what are access keys. So basically, in terms of IAM resources, I have one user group, I have 2 users, I have 12 roles, in terms of policy, I have 1. And now I want to focus on creating a user actually. So I'm gonna click on create user. In terms of username, I'm gonna name my user Fred, and it's gonna ask me if I want to provide user access to the AWS management console. It's optional, but I want to do that. So basically what this means is you are giving this user access to AWS management console. So basically this user will be able to log in and do something or do things in your root account, depending on the permissions you have given to you, like depending on the rules given to this particular user. So I want that, I'm gonna tick that. Then in terms of console password, I want to create a custom password. I don't want to create an auto-generated password, because why not? I want to remember this. Remember the benefit of creating a custom password is you want this user to remember his or her password. So basically I'm gonna enter the password I want to give to this user, and that's it. Users must create a new password at next signing. I don't want to do that. This basically means that after creating this user have to create his own personal password, which he or she is the only person who knows it, so that's basically what that means. So I'm gonna click on next. I think we are done. So in terms of set permissions, remember permissions are just rules. What rules do you want to assign to this user? What permissions do you want this user to have, basically? So that's what this means. So basically for me, I want to, okay, let's just read for now. So permission options, you have 3 options actually: add user to group, copy permissions, attach policies directly. Forget about these tools. We want to actually focus on this one, which says add user to group. Remember that it's a best practice by AWS itself that says you must add a user to a group. That's more, good, so I want to do that. And I have one group here in terms of user groups. In terms of user groups, I have one group, which is the admin. Admin is short for administrator access. So basically, if I put this user inside the admin group, this user will have access to everything inside my root user account. So that's what I want to do for now, because I want to demonstrate something. So I'm gonna click on next. Then as you can see, this is the review and create. So user details, name is Fred. I created a custom password, remember. at the next login, I don't want to create a new password because this is just a demo, but it's actually a good practice to click on, to tick that box which says yes, you want to create a new password, because the user should be the only person to know the AWS password. So permission summary, I have added this user to the administrator group, so I'm gonna create user. So now I've actually created a user. So what I want to do right now is log in as the user. But before we do that, I want to show you something. Let me go to, continue, don't worry about that. Then go to, here. So this is the account alias. So basically every every user I create under this account, so it will have the same account alias as the root account. You'll see what I mean in just a second. I'm going to sign out of my root account. Remember, this is the root account. I want to sign in as the user now, not the root account. Although Fred has administrator access, but he's not using the root account, right? So remember that account alias. I'm gonna type it there. Then the user is Fred. Remember, the username we said is Fred. Then I'm gonna type in the password real quick. So right now I have logged in as the user, which is Fred. So this is Fred's account, right? You can see things like the custom usage because Fred has administrator access, so Fred can see everything that is happening inside the root user account because I created a permission and assigned it to that group, remember? So Fred has access to everything basically. So if I could search S3, remember S3 is just a storage space. So if I click on S3, Fred has access to S3. As you can see, I can see things like my bucket. I have one bucket currently. I can view it, see what's inside of it. I'm not gonna do that because that information is confidential actually. So I'm gonna access another service called EC2. So EC2 is nothing but virtual machines. So if you want to create a virtual machine, you just come in here and create a virtual machine. So I can launch an instance. So basically AWS calls them instances. So I can launch an instance. This is how you launch an instance. You give it a name, you choose the type of OS you want, which is the Amazon machine image, then what type of machine in terms of size and everything you want, and all that. I'm gonna discuss that on the EC2 lecture. You don't have to worry about that. So basically what I'm trying to say is Fred has access to everything basically. Sorry. So that's that. So I'm just gonna go back to my management console. As you can see, Fred can view everything, but if I sign out and now I want to sign in as my root user, let me do that quickly. So if I want to sign in as the root user, I'm gonna click on that button there, then type in my email address quickly. So next, then I'm gonna type in my password. Remember we discussed MFA, which is the multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, it needs two two-factor authentication. The password you know, and it's either your biometric, it's either a fingerprint, your face recognition, or some code. So in my case, I'm using Authy. So I'm gonna enter my MFA code from the app. So I'm gonna enter it quickly. Remember guys, I don't want to make long videos because long videos tend to be boring sometimes. So I want to, make small chunks of videos. So after logging in here, what I want to do is go to IAM again. So I'm gonna click on IAM, then access the service. There, I want to do one thing before I end this video actually. So basically, I'm going to go to remember I added Fred on the admin group. So basically, okay, let me go back and actually show you how can you access your user groups. So on your side panel here, you have user groups. So I'm gonna click on that. Then I want to create a new group called developers. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. Developers. Then this is the name of the group. Here you choose which users you want to add to the group. So basically I want to add Fred. Then here I want to attach a particular or a specific permission called S3 full access. I can click on it, then I can create the user group. Remember, this user group has a permission assigned called S3 access. Okay, S3 full access, Amazon S3 full access. That means that this particular group has only one permission to only one service. Remember the administrator access. You have access to everything on the AWS management console, but in the case of this group has only access to S3, which like basically all the users inside this group has access to AWS S3 full access. So everything in everything in S3, the users inside this group can access. So basically I'm gonna create that user group quickly. Then now I have two groups, which is the developers group and the administrator group. So inside this group we have Fred. Then in terms of permissions, we have Amazon S3 full access. We have only this permission. So basically I want to show you something. After that, I actually want to remove Fred out of this group, the administrator, the admin group basically. So I'm gonna remove Fred. The Fred is removed. As you can see, now I have two users. Then I'm gonna sign out of my root account, right? I'm gonna go back to Fred's account, right? So I've already discussed the account alias. So the name of the user is Fred. I'm gonna quickly type in Fred's password. The sign in. Oh yes, sign in. So now we have red access denied messages. Why? Because everything you do on the AWS management console, it's an API call. Because now Fred has only access to S3. Fred doesn't get to see things like the cost and usage because he or she doesn't have access to that. Okay, Fred it's a he. Let's just assume. he can't see like anything, even if I try to access EC2. Remember, Fred doesn't have access to EC2. We get the access denied API errors. Why? Because Fred doesn't have access to that. Remember, we assigned a S3 full access permission to Fred. That's the only permission that group has. So if you try to access S3, so Fred has access, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to end this video here. I hope you guys understand the difference between users, the root account, users, groups, and the permissions. Partially, we haven't discussed thoroughly what are permissions, because we have to also explain what is how can you individually assign permission. So more on that on the next video. I hope you guys have a great day and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.